the San Jose State women's volleyball team, they have a transgender player named Blair Fleming on their squad. And Boise State, Wyoming, and Utah State have opted not to compete against San Jose State already this season. To Ronnie T-Shirt's frustration, they have not explicitly stated why they have elected to forfeit those games. But breaking news this week, Nevada has decided that they do not wish to compete against this player and San Jose State either. And for the first time, we have seen a statement from the team saying that they are specifically electing not to compete because of the transgender player being on the team. And you can see here the co-captain says the school released that statement, and they had released a statement previously saying that they would play the game. The team got together and decided differently. She says that when the statement was released, they had not been consulted. We were upset. We were not made aware that a statement was even going to come out. And she goes on to say that it was frustrating and that they decided that they would not participate in a game that, in her words, Sia, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm not going to attempt to, but she says that this advances sex-based discrimination or injustice against female athletes. So a stand being taken by the Nevada women's volleyball team. Dave, what do you think of this? This is a little bit of a move, towards being candid that Boise State, Wyoming, and Utah State did not make.
Good for the other schools, but I'm with you, Ricky. This is the next step. So why didn't you play those games? Let's not hide anymore behind it. Let's go and say why we have chosen not to play. I find it so interesting that Nevada comes out as a school and says, we're going to play the game. And then the students are like, the hell we are. I thought, this country loves activism, right? They love when the college kids go out there and they're pro-Hamas and they're rooting for this and they're cheering on that. But God forbid the activism goes against what somebody else might think is the proper way to show their activism. Everybody gets all upset, right? Now the kids are the problem. Now the Nevada student athletes, they're the problem. No, good on Sia. Good on Nevada, on the players, not the school, on the players for saying, no, this is our bodies, and we're not going to go out there and, subject ourselves to one unfair advantage for another player on another team, and two, possibly get injured. We've seen this happen before. And again, I've said it for months now, and you know this too, Ricky. The first time I see a biological woman transition to become a man and petition to play in men's sports will be the first time. That will still be the first time. And we have not seen it. Why is it that it's always the other way? Why is it a biological man is always trying to play women's sports? It's because it's an unfair advantage. We all know this. This isn't earth-shattering. We're not breaking any news here, but what people are doing is burying their head in the sand and acting like somehow that the girls now on Nevada are the problem. They're not. They're actually having the courage of their conviction to say why we are choosing not to play in this game. And it's so funny, like Riley Gaines, I love this, when you see her tweet and encouraging other women to stand up for women, and somehow Riley Gaines is the problem. I mean, this is amazing to me that when people show their activism, if it's not quote unquote for their side, they get all bent out of shape about it. So good on these women at Nevada. Good on Riley and Amber, as you mentioned, doing a great job with this story and the continuing coverage of it. I'm all for it. I'm all for people speaking their minds, do what they believe is the right thing to do, even if the school is not supportive of their own student athletes.
And there we saw, while you were speaking on this, photo of some Utah State players wearing their boycott shirts. So those young ladies from Utah State, even though the school did not issue a statement stating why the game was being forfeited, the players there certainly are making their opinions known with those shirts. Now, again, Dave, you said it. We've talked about it. It's a competitive balance in the game issue. That's all that it is. I'm all in favor of transgender people having all the same rights and social privileges and respect that everyone else has. Completely. Everyone should be treated with dignity and respect. Yes. And I will respect every transgender person just as I would respect anybody else that I encounter in society equally. That's not an issue. What we're talking about here is what you said. If this was a situation where your anatomy that you were born with, the chromosomal makeup that your body has naturally from birth, if that was a non-issue competitively, we would equally see women to male trans people performing equally so. Okay, so you tell me, where is the biological X, the XX female who's going into an XY world and performing well and winning trophies and beating the competition? What we see, however, are mediocre biological males who go into women's athletics and suddenly become elite performers. Leah Thomas is the poster child for this. A very middling male swimmer who becomes transgender and then goes over and starts beating legitimately top flight NCAA women's swimmers such as our own Riley Gaines. So when we're only seeing male to female transitions that are becoming, suddenly I guess you transition into a outstanding athlete as well, magically. And it defies all reason and common sense, Dave. It's just a common sense issue. You are born with a different body if you have XY chromosomes. And yes, you can mitigate it somewhat by going through whatever the procedures are that you go through. You can transform your body. You can mitigate it somewhat, but you can't erase it clearly. Because if you could erase it clearly, Leah Thomas would have been a mediocre male swimmer who transitioned female and was a middle of the pack women's swimmer. And if that was the case, well then I guess, okay, fine. I'd be fine with that. But guess what? It's not how biology works, Dave.
No, you nailed it 100%, Ricky. It gets back to your tweet. What is Ricky tweeting today of Andy Rooney? Like, couldn't you hear Andy Rooney going, you ever wonder why no biological women are now transgender men and competing in men's sports? That's because they don't have an advantage. That's my bad, Andy Rooney. But you could totally understand, like you can hear it in his voice, and it gets back to common sense. When you're only seeing it go one way, that we're seeing biological men transition into women's sports, it tells you everything you need to know. And on a bigger picture, I think this is why it's a big problem when the Democratic Party takes this platform that, believe and trust all women, and then real women are going, well, they're not women. They're not women in the sense of a competitive disadvantage when it comes to sports. So like when they do these platforms and for whatever reason, they don't say the obvious, which is what we're saying, what Nevada is saying, is that this is an unfair competitive advantage. And we in the United States are supposed to be about meritocracy when it comes to sports and the best win, to then put actual biological women at a disadvantage and not realize that side of it. It's such a blind spot, I think, for left-wing activism, for the Democratic Party, that they cannot understand that while they're trying to champion, and again, we would not be counter to this. We would hope everybody, whatever they believe they are in their life, that's fine. Walk that path. but don't do it at a competitive disadvantage to collegiate women that are trying to, like Riley Gaines, be the best at their individual sports. And then all of a sudden they have to compete against somebody who was a man. This is ridiculous. We all know it. Some are afraid to say it because they don't want to get labeled a certain way. It's time to stop with the craziness of not saying what we all know to be true. And if I wish half the country could just say, yeah, that's not fair. We should have a separate transgender category. Well, why not? We have Special Olympics for people that are not able-bodied because we know it would be unfair to put them against able-bodied participants. This is not hard. This is not, oh, we got to figure it out and the science and all. No, this is all common sense. And it's why we have differences between men and women's sports, and we don't put everybody in the same category because there are physical advantages that men have over women. It's common sense.
It's common sense. It's amazing that we even have to argue about it. If you went in a time machine back 30, 40, 50 years, 20 years, and you explained to somebody that this was like actually a big argument in our society and that this was going on, people would look at you like you had a foot growing out of your forehead. They'd be, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, this isn't, what are you talking about? We've lost the plot here that we're even talking about this. I mean, how are we even debating it, much less how has it become such a mainstream thing, Dave? Look, I could go on, but I want to bag on Joel Embiid now. So, so I'm going to make a hard turn here, and I'm just going to wheel off the highway into the parking lot, and I'm going to talk about Joel Embiid because he said, Dave, that he's probably never going to play another back-to-back in his career, very possibly. And Daryl Morey, the general manager of the 76ers and a friend of Super 70 Sports, we won't do any Daryl Morey slander on this program, but he said that Paul George and Joel Embiid both probably will play very limited, if any, back-to-backs. So we are squarely in the load management era. If somebody has an injury, here you can see Embiid's quote. If I had to guess, probably never play back-to-backs the rest of my career. We got to do whatever it takes to make sure that in the postseason, I'm healthy. Well, look, I don't want Joel Embiid to go out there and, hurt himself. And I say this without sarcasm. If he has, certain liabilities in terms of injury susceptibilities, I get where they're coming from. But sometimes I feel like we forget that sports, first and foremost, it's an entertainment enterprise. People go to these games to be entertained. They take their kids to be entertained. So I guess the best advice that I could give to anybody, if you want to go see Joel Embiid play, is check the schedule and make sure that you don't spend your hard-earned money on the back end of a back-to-back, because there's a very good chance he's going to be in street clothes.
Well, Ricky, I'd just like to say, I hate to tell you and everybody at OutKick, but I think I'm going to have to do every other show for the rest of the week because load management. I'm getting older, man. So if you guys don't mind, I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow. We'll figure it out. I'll let you know tomorrow, I guess. How in the world, and I get it, you're right. Like, we're trying to be sensitive to injuries and you're getting older and you're trying to keep your body up, but obviously for 82 now gets cut to 41. Well, I'm going to need to see you in my office if I'm Daryl Morey and say, well, we're going to have to cut your pay in half. Well, how would that go over? Well, you're playing half the time. Like, Ricky, that's a dream if I'm Joel Embiid. I get to do half the work, but get paid the same? Sign me up. Well,
just back-to-backs. I don't know how many back-to-backs they have on their schedule. So,
whatever that is,
it's probably more in the order of 15 or 20 or something like that, I would guess.
Okay.
But I don't know how many back-to-backs they have.
I'll pay you for 65 games. How's that sound? You get a prorated 65 game. This is insane. And by the way, I would respond in kind to Joel Embiid because I say GIFs. I know people say GIFs. I'm not sure which is right, but I'm going to stick with GIFs. I would just put the Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul, GIF, which just says soft. We are so soft. We are so soft. I covered Michael Jordan in Washington, D.C., Ricky, at his advancing age. And guess what? He played every damn game he could play, and we loved it in Washington, D.C. So don't tell me that this is scientifically proven.
There you go, Dave.
It doesn't exist, but these guys are soft.
37 minutes a game at age 40, all 82 games. Can we get a look at the Boston Celtics guy that I tweeted about? I think Gerald Henderson is his name. Take a look at this, Dave. This is in 1980. This son of a bitch went out there and played with a front-facing neck brace on.
Yes.
I mean, it's one of the greatest things that's ever happened. Look at this.
Anything to play. Anything to play. By the way, VCU grad. That's my alma mater, VCU, Gerald Henderson. But yes, that's what I'm talking about. Guys would, they didn't have air in their shoes. They played with flat shoes, bad feet, hard, all that stuff. And they tried to go out there, whether it was a front neck brace or Michael Jordan at 40 in Washington, D.C. I'm playing. You know why? Because I love this game. I want to play every day. When you tell me, I think it'd probably be good if I just sat out. That tells me a little bit about your mentality as well. And maybe, I don't know, maybe why Philadelphia hasn't won anything since Dr. J and the boys.
Dallas, which is the king of the soap opera NFL world. It has been since probably, I don't know, around 1989 or so, when a certain oil man from Arkansas bought the Dallas Cowboys. He brought in Jimmy Johnson, his college buddy, and Jimmy Johnson got him a couple of Super Bowls, and he built that team up so nice that Jerry brought in Barry Switzer, and Barry Switzer got him another one. But let's be honest, that was kind of Jimmy Johnson's Super Bowl too, wasn't it? So 3 Super Bowls in his first 6-7 years of owning the team, Jerry Jones was riding high. But it's been a long, almost 30 years in Dallas since Jimmy Johnson left. Since that last Super Bowl victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers. We are now in what? Going on how many years now? How old is Jerry Jones? Jerry Jones is 137 years old. He's like Joe Louis. Frank Sinatra came into the barbershop one time and said, "How old is Jerry Jones?" Hey, Jerry Jones is 137 years old. Jerry doesn't have a ton of time left to get that elusive 4th Super Bowl, and you know how badly the man wants it. 3-3 to start the season, an ass-kicking of epic proportion from Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions on Sunday afternoon in Dallas. The Cowboys are now 0-3 at home. It's supposed to be home field advantage. It's not working out that way, and, well, look, where does this story get fun? This sounds like a lot of Cowboys seasons. 500. Jason Garrett, Mr. 8-8 himself. How many coaches have we been through during the post-Jimmy Johnson era in Dallas? How many disappointments has the franchise endured? And yet here we are talking about, yes, there's a reason that I'm leading with this today. Bill Belichick. That's right, the GOAT. 6-time Super Bowl winning head coach. 2-time Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator. A man who's all about winning. And let's be honest, if we are basing greatness on the number of Lombardis that have been hoisted, Belichick is the man. Maybe you prefer Lombardi. Maybe you prefer Chuck Noll. Maybe you prefer Papa Bear George Halas. Maybe you're a Bill Walsh guy. But the fact is, if we're looking purely at the record, Bill Belichick is the greatest that has ever done it. And the question is, does he want to coach in the NFL again? He didn't find a very enthusiastic market for himself. The Atlanta Falcons passing him over after an interview with them. A little bit of a slap in the face, some might say, to the GOAT. And so Belichick sitting this year out. Now, he's occupied because, as you may be aware, he's got a 24-year-old girlfriend. This just into the newsroom, I'm being told that she's hot. I don't know if he's going to marry this woman. I would recommend, Bill, that you get a prenup. You got to button that down. There may not be anything left of Bill Belichick by the time we get to 2025. Dating a woman that's, I think she's like a third of his age. How old is Bill Belichick? Old enough to know how fucking fortunate he is. I guarantee you that. But that's Lombardi Trophy energy that the man has right there. Attracting women that are young enough to be his granddaughter. Is it a little gross? I don't know, maybe. But once he's done with that, he's got to make a decision. Am I coming back? Do I have the thirst for this? Do I want to do it one more time? And you got to think that a guy like Bill Belichick, who's all about the challenge, who eats, sleeps, drinks, and lives football, at least when he's not working his game with the young ladies, inexplicably, you got to think Dallas is a situation that would interest him. Jerry Jones, he likes to do things big, now doesn't he? He likes to make news. He likes to make headlines. What's going to make more headlines than bringing in Bill Belichick to turn around the Dallas Cowboys, maybe win a couple of Super Bowls, and they both ride off into the sunset? Jerry Jones trying to cement a legacy that, I don't know, he gets a couple more. You got to put him on the Mount Rushmore of NFL owners. Some might argue he's already there. Belichick doesn't need it, but you know what? I don't think Bill Belichick, deep down on a gut level, loves the fact that Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay and got one without him. How many times did you hear people ask the question, well, you know, how much of this is Brady? How much of this is Belichick? We know that they were the fucking Hall and Oates of dominance this century. But which one of them was more instrumental? Well, Tom Brady seems to have answered that question, at least in the near term. And I think Bill Belichick has a fire that burns within him that he wants to go get one without Tom Brady. Does he need to? Probably not. But do you think it would mean something to him to go say, hey, Tom, guess what? I can do it without you too, buddy. Per The Athletic, Bill Belichick's career NFL head coaching record without Tom Brady under center is 85 and 102. Again, that is according to The Athletic. He's not going to have Tom Brady in Dallas. He's going to have Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott and Bill Belichick, is that a winning combination? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. If I had an NFL expert who also was a Dallas Cowboys fan handy, this might be a good time to bring him into the program. Oh, wait, I do. Las Vegas, Nevada's own Dave Ross joins me. Dave, you got to be watching this with interest. You were commenting, sort of defending Mike McCarthy a little bit on the program this week, saying, look, the guy is a Super Bowl winner in Green Bay. He's posted 3 consecutive 12-5 seasons in Dallas, which is nothing to sneeze at. But Dave, this is year 5 of the McCarthy regime in Dallas, and it's only generated 1 playoff win. How tasty would it be for all of us, but particularly for Jerry Jones and Dallas Cowboys fans, if he was able to bring Bill Belichick out of retirement?
Oh. Ricky, first of all, great to be with you on a Tuesday. I would say I was never more infuriated with your open like 5 minutes ago, and then you flipped it on me. Like you flipped it halfway through when you went to the Belichick part, and I started to calm down, get my blood pressure back down, because I do find myself defending Jerry Jones a lot, right? And that's probably, as a fan, not a place you want to be, defending your owner, because that means things have gone maybe sometimes colossally wrong year after year after year, as you mentioned, since about 1995. I mean, it's been a minute. I mean, I have the DVD here from the 1994 year in sports. You see Emmitt Smith's on the cover. It was narrated by Marv Albert. So it's been a Hakeem Olajuwon up here. So like,
that looks like a VHS, Dave.
Yeah,
you gotta get out the
VHS.
VCR for that son of a bitch.
This was given to me as a gift because they knew I'd probably still have a VCR somewhere. I don't, but I'll get one just to watch this again. But I am kind of living in the past a little bit. Like your point about, is Jerry Jones a Hall of Fame owner? Of course he is. Of course he is. I mean, when you win 3 Super Bowls as an owner, that puts you in rarefied air. Now, I know we haven't seen one in Dallas in 29 years here in 2024. So it's been a minute since we've been to that mountaintop again. And you're right. There's nothing that Jerry Jones wants before, I don't know if you're right, maybe he's 126 years old, before we all expire someday on this earth. He wants one more. But my question would be, does Bill Belichick get him closer to that end game versus what Big Mike McCarthy has done with 12, 12, and 12 in the last 3 years? Like, if you told me, if you're going to fire Big Mike McCarthy, who are you going to get? And the answer is Bill Belichick. I'll listen to that. You're going to get me to calm right down and say that might make sense, because I'm with you. The proof is in the pudding. And Bill Belichick is, by winning standards, the greatest head coach of all time with 6 Super Bowl rings. I love the point about Brady. Does he want to one-up Tom? I mean, Tom one-upped Bill Belichick. I used to have these arguments in Chicago when I worked there with my coworkers who said, oh, no, it's Belichick, it's not Brady. And I'm like, what are y'all, crazy? This is Brady. And then when Brady left and wins one the year after, I go, cool Mo D, how do you like me now? I mean, it was literally telling you, I just did it. I left, and in year one, won without you. That does stick in Bill Belichick's craw. And I know that he's having a lot of fun with his 24-year-old, whatever they are. And you're right. I think you're right that the people in the booth, she is hot. So he's enjoying life outside of football. But at the end of the day, what do you want to do? You don't want to be one-upped by Brady. You don't want to be one-upped historically. And that would forever be a narrative. It would be. So if he was able to do the Parcells route, people almost forget that Bill Parcells and Jerry Jones got along great. By all accounts, Belichick and Jerry Jones get along great. Obviously, maybe it's an odd couple, but I think it makes some sense. And I do think with Dak Prescott, remember, I mean, Belichick really, yes, he's the greatest head coach, but he's not necessarily an offensive guru. I think Dak in the offense would be just fine. I'd be curious to see who he brought in to run the offense, because that's what Big Mike does. And the offense really isn't that big of a problem. I know it doesn't look great so far in the 3 home losses, but to me, Belichick does make some sense. So if you are looking, because I always say, if you're going to fire the guy, that's fine. Who do you replace him with? If you replace Mike McCarthy with Bill Belichick, you're not going to get a lot of pushback from me. I don't think that Big Mike deserves to be fired. I want that to be known too. But who do you replace him with? The greatest of all time? It would be hard to say you don't want to kick the tires on that and see if it actually works.
If you do bring in Belichick, does he want total organizational control? Is that something that Jerry Jones is going to be comfortable with? I mean, you've got 2 mega egos coming together like Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3 here. Can those guys work together for the greater good? Because the thing that you heard about Belichick being on the market this past offseason was teams are reluctant to just hand everything over to a coach the way that Bill Belichick is accustomed to running business.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Atlanta Falcons clearly made the right choice. Why would you ever want to give Bill Belichick all the control in Atlanta when you've had so much success down there in the ATL? So let's give it to Raheem Morris and trusted GM or Terry Fontenot. What? Like, are you kidding me, Atlanta? Look, I hope it works out for Raheem. I covered him in DC. Nice guy. I'm rooting for him. But like, that was the draw of the line in the sand for Bill Belichick not to come to the ATL. Okay, good luck. Look, when Parcells went down there, everybody said the same things, right? Everybody said, "Oh, this isn't going to work." Parcells and Jerry are not going to work. You know, Parcells was the guy that discovered Tony Romo. I mean, I'll never forget the Thanksgiving Day game where the Cowboys lose badly. Drew Hutchinson is the starting quarterback. No, who was it? It was Chad Hutchinson was the starting quarterback, I think, that day, and Drew Henson was also in the roster there. And he said, "Look, the best quarterback we have is this undrafted kid that I want to play." That undrafted kid was Tony Romo. And then all of a sudden, we never hear about the Hensons and Hutchinsons anymore. I mean, Bill knows football; he knows what to do, and clearly, it did work short term in Dallas. I don't think it was a problem with Jerry Jones and certainly back then with Bill Parcells not getting along. I don't think that will be an issue in Dallas if that's where we end up going here in Big D. So, like, giving up some control. Stephen Jones does a really good job in the front office. Jerry's going to have his say. But at the end of the day, it was like, Jerry Jones wanted to draft Manziel out of Texas A&M, right? Johnny Football. And the front office said, including Stephen Jones, "No, Dad, that's not what we're going to do." And they ended up drafting now a guy that's going to go in the Hall of Fame, from the offensive line. So we're going to go Zach Martin out of Notre Dame, Dad. We're not going to go Johnny Manziel. So Jerry has been talked off ledges before. And if Bill Belichick is that voice in the room, at the end of the day, they're going to listen to Bill Belichick. So I think a lot of that gets a little bit blown out of control because we want Jerry on the wall. You need Jerry on the wall. He is that character from A Few Good Men. That's who we all want to vilify Jerry Jones to be. But I think inside those closed doors, at the end of the day, normally they get drafts right, if that's what we're getting to. And when it comes to football decisions, those would be made by Bill Belichick. So I think it's a convenient narrative that Jerry is always the problem in Dallas. It's not. They've been a very good team. Not great, but a very good team with Jerry's involvement, yes. But I don't think he's what everybody thinks he is. This mastermind behind the scenes, pulling all the strings for Mike McCarthy and beyond. I actually do think there's more voices of reason than we're led to believe.
Well, it reminds me a little bit, Jerry's situation to George Steinbrenner. Now, Jerry's drought is longer than Steinbrenner's, but, I remember when I was a kid, the New York Yankees were total drama, right? Billy Martin's fired, he's hired, he's fired, he's hired. I think like 5 times he had stints as the Yankees manager. The Yankees win the World Series in 77 and 78, and then there was a drought. They didn't make it back. I mean, they went to the 81 series and lost it, but they didn't make it back until 96. And then Joe Torre, George mellowed some. He had some consistency there. Joe Torre went on and managed them to 4 championships. He got another one with Girardi later on. Jerry would love to have a renaissance to kind of bookend this, right? He made the splash 30 plus years ago. He got those 3 Super Bowls. He probably felt like he was going to win a dozen the way things were going at that time. And then suddenly the door shuts and you're going on 30 years here. He's got more money than he'll ever be able to spend, generational wealth for the Jones family for, until the world, the universe meets its heat death or whatever happens. They're going to be fine. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's got 3 Super Bowls. He has to want this so fucking badly. And so it will be very interesting. Mike McCarthy, the only outcome that might save Mike McCarthy's job, if Belichick really wants to do this, is a Super Bowl victory. I'm not sure there's anything Mike McCarthy can do to retain his job performance-wise, Dave, if Belichick wants this and Jerry is so inclined.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, Ricky, Jerry's stubborn, right? I think we all know that if you follow him through his career, and clearly he was stubborn when it came to Jimmy Johnson and who gets the credit, and so he fires Jimmy after a drunken dinner, well back, 1994, and then you bring in Barry Switzer. What was his quote? "I can get 50 guys to coach this team," right? Well, Jerry was kind of right because he did get one of those 50 to coach that team to a Super Bowl, so he's got an ego. And now all these reporters, every day, Ricky, it's, well, what's the criteria? What would it take to have a coaching change? And Jerry's bristling at that. And he's like, look, you guys keep asking me all you want to ask. And I get it from Jerry's point of view. You're asking the owner of a team that made an unpopular hire by bringing in Mike McCarthy, who's gone on to have great regular season success. I think a lot of teams would kill for 12-12-12, 3 years in a row, and division titles in there, 2 of those 3. That's sustained success. So what do we always talk about? Trust the process, right? Ask the 76er fans about that. Like, the process looks like it's there. We're not getting the result at the end of the day that you want in the playoffs. But do you then throw all of that out and start over because 12 isn't good enough to where you want to go? Be careful in that, because if it's not Belichick and you didn't get Bill there and you fire Big Mike, good luck, because you get very close to resetting back to the Jason Garrett era. And as you recall there, that was 8-8. That wasn't 12-4, 12-5, right? There's a difference in the Mike and the Jason Garrett framework of mediocrity. Like, I think it's a misnomer to say the Cowboys are mediocre with Mike McCarthy. If 12-5 is mediocre, sign me up for that every year, and I'll take those chances in the playoffs.
Yeah, there are a lot of franchises that would be elated to have gone 12-5 the past 3 years, but of course, in Dallas, the standard is just different. Looking around the league, Dave, I mean, there are Mike McCarthy's not the only guy who might have some job security issues. What do you make of Nick Sirianni jawing with the fans in Philadelphia after the win over the Cleveland Browns on Sunday? His fortunes have taken quite a turn there. You almost win a Super Bowl. Last year, they're 10-1 and cruising along, and then go 1-5 to wrap up the season, get bumped in the wild card round of the playoffs, and now you're 500 and you're bitching at fans this year. What's going on there? And do you see any other coaches around the league that should be nervous, let's say, at this point?
Okay, I am Italian, and Sirianni, we've got Siriannis in our Italian side of the family. I don't know if I'm related. I kind of hope not. Like, you can go back and look at certain coaching hires, Ricky, and I was at one personally in Washington, D.C. when Jim Zorn was hired, and I was sitting next to the great Rick Doc Walker, won a Super Bowl with Joe Gibbs, and Zorn comes out to the press conference, and he says, we're really excited and get this fan base going with the maroon and black, and I wrote down on a pad of paper, maroon and black, ? And Doc just wrote down next, because you're trying to be respectful at the press conference, Doc just wrote down, not a good start, right? So he kind of knew, like, ooh, it's a rough beginning, didn't have the team colors right. I can remember Jim Tom Sula when he had his introductory press conference for the 49ers, and I went, ooh, this isn't going to end well. Adam Gase in New York, remember, he was like looking all around the room nervously, like, I don't know what he was looking at, and that didn't end well. Go back and watch Sirianni's introductory press conference for the Eagles. Disaster. And I remember cringing, going, oh, the guy's nervous. Like, I want to root for him. Like, you never know. It's your first time. It's your first gig, right? Well, maybe that's who he is. He's kind of prickly. He's kind of ornery. I think he rubs people the wrong way. Like, even normally you say, well, if he's on your team, you love him. But if he's not on your team, you hate him. I don't even know that they love him on his team. It's a weird vibe with this guy. And the other thing that I think is foul play, Nick Sirianni, is after you did the annex that Ricky was talking about, jawing with the fans after a 4-point victory over the Browns. So the fans are giving it to you. Your fans are giving it to you. And then you decide to give it back to them? Bad. So what do? You bring your kid to the press conference. human shield. You bring a human shield as a toddler, as a kid to the press conference. Shame on you, Nick Sirianni.
Hey, OutKick fans on YouTube, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and make your way over to OutKick.com where you can watch the full episode.